You know those spam texts we all get. Pay your toll, pick up a parcel, the ATO needs your attention now. We delete them, we eye roll, and we think we're too smart to fall for that. But one click, one moment of distraction, and it can all unravel. Because behind that text is a trap built on phishing, spoofing, and precision social engineering. And if your bank's fraud prevention processes are weak, that's when the real damage begins.
This has become the most profitable crime on earth because it's such a high profit crime and such a low risk.
One bad SMS message can see you accidentally hand over the keys to your bank account. I'm Alex Brooks. This is episode 9 of Daylight Robbery. Your smartphone is more than just a device. It's also a target. Scammers can spoof trusted numbers, your bank, the ATO, Medicare, even Australia Post. One fake message, one believable lie. That's all it takes. In this episode, you'll hear how criminals can easily slip into someone's texts and steal everything.
My name is Katrina. Actually, I come from China originally.
In April 2023, Katrina Qian had just moved into her new Sydney apartment. A scam text from Australia Post arrived at the same time as an email from Kmart. Her new TV table had just been delivered. Worried her new furniture would be stolen like parcels had from her last home, she clicked the Australia Post link and paid $2 to reschedule delivery. When she didn't get a receipt, she panicked, realising she'd been caught in a scam. She called her bank in China to report and block the charge, but the damage had already begun.
So then I think it's finished. Yeah, it's safe. But after that day, or maybe that day or the second day, at about 9 a.m., when I was sleeping, the person called me, but the number didn't show. It showed no number, no ID.
And that caller said they were from the Australian Government Security Department. And did Katrina know that her bank accounts were under threat? Knowing she'd just had a near miss with her Chinese bank payment to that scam text, Katrina's ears pricked up.
He said, I can help you to prevent further damage because I found that more than 20 people attacked your account. Yeah, I was scared.
This type of social engineering is a common trick. It's called smishing. Katrina immediately rang HSBC to check her money was safe. And within minutes of that call, her bank told her her account had been drained. Stolen via an everyday global HSBC account, the hackers were able to open in her name. Katrina lost 33,000 Great British pounds in a digital bank robbery from an HSBC bank account she never opened in a currency she didn't use.
I think I don't have too much money to support my home loan. Then my parents decided to sell my apartment in China.
So Katrina lost her Chinese apartment so she could continue to pay the mortgage on her Sydney apartment. Her loss at today's exchange rate is a whopping 68,000 Aussie dollars. And HSBC still won't reimburse her nearly 2 years later. In hindsight, Katrina remembers her scammer, who had an Indian accent, not a British accent, got very excited when she disclosed she had an HSBC account. And that's interesting because HSBC is now being investigated by the Australian regulator ASIC. ASIC says the bank didn't have adequate controls for the detection and prevention of what they call unauthorised payments, or scammers. Even worse, the regulator has accused the bank of not even investigating the hacks. Katrina put a block on her HSBC account straight away, but someone in Melbourne bought a meal at Hungry Panda and charged her $17.11, even after she put that block on the account. Now, these scammers can be lone wolf hackers sitting in a hoodie in their garage, but more likely they're part of a highly organised network. They probably operate from call centres likely located throughout Southeast Asia, and they use on-the-ground people here in Australia as and when they need. These scammers can run banks of phones and know how to spoof or disguise where they call from. They can appear in the same thread as trusted sources. And yes, the federal government has a new sender ID register coming. It won't be active until December 2025. So your mobile phone, your SIM card are now a big new threat vector for financial criminals. In Britain, phones are stolen from people's hands in London streets as thieves try to get into bank accounts and then sell your phone for parts. Within months of Katrina's scam, her organised attackers moved on to a much more effective social engineering hack and attack. They messaged victims directly from an HSBC SMS, and it caused disaster for at least 950 HSBC customers here in Australia, many of whom were too ashamed or embarrassed to speak out about what ASIC says was a $23 million loss. But not Sunni Wan, who put together a Facebook group of HSBC victims to lobby and advocate for change.
When Sunni Wan got a text that appeared to be from her bank, global giant HSBC, about a suspicious login, she called the number listed.
He asked exactly the same verification questions as a HSBC representative. I thought I was genuinely speaking to HSBC employee. Yes.
But it was a scam, and almost $50,000 was stolen from her account.
I wasn't able to make my mortgage repayments.
The bank refused to help Sunni at first. No refund, no recovery. It took a decision from AFCA, the bank-funded complaints body, to change that. In 2024, AFCA made what's called a lead decision, a turning point. The so-called Mr. T decision ruled that if victims share one-time passcodes while thinking they're speaking to their bank, they haven't authorised the loss. It was the first time someone called out the absurd claim that people consent to being scammed. But even with that win, it took months for Sunni to see her money again, in a confidential settlement that she can't talk to me about. Others weren't so lucky. Some HSBC victims accepted 50 or 60% reimbursement just to survive, and that locked them out of claiming the rest of the money after the lead decision. Justice, when it comes, is quiet, partial, and painfully hard won. And that's exactly how the banks like it. Dragging out complaints keeps the focus off the real issue. Are electronic banking systems actually safe? Banks love to blame telcos and social media for scams like these, but let's be clear, the harm happens at the point of transaction. The stolen money flows through mule accounts and money laundering networks that only the banks can control. Yet, as long as a bank shows AFCA that it tried to recall the funds from that very first mule account, it can walk away. Case closed, no accountability. And it's not just HSBC behaving like this. All the banks do it. For years, the big banks, backed by lobby groups like the Australian Banking Association, have shifted the blame onto customers, slowly, deliberately, and very cost-effectively for the banks. Just like ANZ Bank did to Melbourne tradie Furkan after scammers stole the concreter's life savings. The 26-year-old received a text message from his own ANZ Bank that a scam payment had gone through to a man called Jason Ling, and could he please call them? Now, this was in the evening, and he was tired after a long day at work.
Very, very sophisticated. They said, they've got access to your accounts, and they said, we're going to do like a stress test to see how strong your account is. And they said to do that, they're going to send me like a randomly generated pay ID.
Furkan's scammers knew he had a NAB bank account, and he swears he did not disclose this to them. So he was instantly panicked, believing it really was ANZ he was talking to, because they were the only organisation that knew he even had this account.
I wanted to go to the branch, to the bank and, sort stuff out. And I said, am I going to get like an automated text message saying that, it is legitimate? And they said, yeah, you'll be receiving it very shortly. And it literally came right away.
He transferred the money over 3 days to 2 different mule accounts. Ironically, both were held by ANZ. 2 names, Muscad Sheikh and Zain Sekour. They received Furkan's money in August last year. Now, I've repeatedly reached out to Muscad and Zain to ask what really happened, but unsurprisingly, they won't talk to me. ANZ were one of the first Big 4 banks in Australia to brag about having mule account detection technology. So how come they didn't pick up the mules they had on their own platforms? Well, ANZ told me that last year their technology flagged 10,500 ANZ bank accounts suspected of receiving scam funds. Now, out of those, the bank says less than 20% were found to be knowingly involved in the fraud or scam, which leaves thousands of other accounts suspected of receiving scam funds that get away with it. And that's the murky part, because no one is policing the banks or these Mule accounts. Now, we've talked about these before. Mule accounts enter our banking and payment system in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes they're set up with fake or stolen IDs. Some are just bought or sold by foreign students or backpackers. And some logins are shared and rented for money. Other mules are scam victims who've been tricked, like Levita was in episode 4. Mule accounts are a big problem, and one which payment platforms have legal obligations to stamp out. But the banks won't open the doors to police or public scrutiny about it. ANZ told me we report these accounts to authorities as appropriate, and the Australian Financial Crimes Exchange. Now, the Australian Financial Crimes Exchange is a great initiative, and I've asked them several times for an interview. They're the body that share intelligence about what's going on with financial crime. Now, they refuse to speak to me, just like Furkan's mules. And I understand why a lot of things need to be kept confidential about these crimes. But given the harm that's happening to everyday Australians, I really believe customers like Furkan and Katrina are owed an explanation. I mean, Furkan was actually robbed by his own bank. Now, he also asked the bank why their ANZ Falcon technology that they pay for billboard ads about didn't flag his 3 fraudulent transactions, especially given he was paying his own bank. The bank told him his account wasn't eligible for Falcon. So I suggested Furkan do his own fact-checking about what was happening with those Mule accounts, and that he should try depositing $1 or so to see if the bank still had those Mule accounts open. So Furkan did as I suggested, and suddenly his account was frozen. He received a call from Falcon, which was now miraculously active on his account.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Jasrel calling from ANZ Fraud Detection. Please call us back at 038-654-9888. Falcon reference the 133-95760. Thank you.
Exactly what Furkan would have wanted to happen in August when he made those 3 $19,000 transactions happened when he made a $1 transaction. If only he'd had the same protection in place when he made those transactions to Muscat and Zane. He tried to demand answers from his bank.
So the transfer I made of $1
Yes.
to Zane, how come? So I didn't really understand how come, like, why it was flagged.
Okay. So security team, or what we call Falcon,
Okay.
with
So
ANZ
Falcon.
is trying to protect the account security for unusual activity, because we are receiving many disputes about fraudulent transaction.
And this is the problem with fraud detection technology in our banks. The AI it uses is clever, but it failed Furkan when he needed it. Fraud detection doesn't often work when regular established bank accounts, like those likely held by Zane and Muscat, are taken over and muled. The AI fraud detection only reacts to what has been fraud. Now, given Furkan was saving $58,000 for a house deposit, he could not believe his money wasn't safe, let alone that it could be stolen through his own bank. Even worse, Furkan says the bank actually threatened him for playing detective and making those transactions, knowingly associating with scammers. ANZ then refunded his 2 $1 transactions, but not his $58,000 that was lost. So I decided to test whether ANZ really had shut down Zane and Muscat's accounts. I transferred $1 from my own bank into those Mule accounts, and the money went through. I asked the bank why these accounts were still active 6 months later, but again, they just didn't want to comment. Now, Furkan says his ANZ account didn't even have 2-factor authentication or one-time passcodes for security at the time of his scam in 2024. The bank only gave him that extra layer of security after he lost all his money.
At the time, I didn't have an ANZ PIN, you know, the 4-digit codes or 6-digit codes you're meant to give out. I never had that until the scam occurred, and then they told me to put like a, you know, security number.
Furkan was genuinely shocked to discover that when he took his case to AFCA, they conciliated a reimbursement of just $6,300, or 10% of his loss. I told him this wasn't unusual, and that was the same amount they conciliated for Levita's loss when she was caught up in a $255,000 job scam that we covered in episode 4. Now, AFCA has made measly remediation amounts part of standard banking practice. In some kind of absurdist Faulty Towers-esque note to itself, ANZ only had to show AFCA that it had sent a note to its own bank to prove it had recalled Furkan's money. Now, many banks claim they can't recover scammed funds, yet they don't offer any proof about why. And is that good enough? I've spoken to bankers off the record who say money can be traced for 3 to 5 hops after it's been transferred out of the first Mule account, just as Yakami from episode 3 found out when she had help from inside Treasury to get back her stolen $750,000. Now, Furkan and Katrina both use the Optus mobile network as their phone provider. And most of you might remember that Optus breached millions of Australia's personal data back in 2022. Emails, phone numbers, and personal details are traded between scammers and mules willing to work together to create elaborate spoofs, fakes, and cons. Now, the most targeted stolen information is health records. MediSecure, AHM, and Medibank have all been breached, and there's a reason for that. Most people don't want their sensitive personal health information divulged. So scammers blackmail and extort senior corporate leaders to get access to even more personal information and financial details. So just like home buyers about to make a huge transaction can be targeted, so too can senior executives who might be taking Viagra or have embarrassing mental health conditions. These senior executive attacks have been nicknamed whaling because they go after the big fish, way beyond phishing or vishing or smishing. These people can control data and financial transactions. It's one endless cycle of crime and offending the police, governments, and corporations don't know how to fix. And they simply refuse to be transparent about it. The technology used to commit scams and fraud is cheap. Criminals don't need to be sophisticated hackers to come away with a massive payday. One fraud detection software company claims it costs as little as $127 to set up as a scammer. There's invoice swapping software to misdirect payment. And those fake Australia Post or bank websites that can spoof emails and SMS messages that look real, well, they could be bought for as little as $270 a month through a platform like LabHost, which was taken down last year by international police efforts. It's an open secret that there's no way to secure our personal information, our phones, or our payment systems.
There's a broad range of criminals that are now getting into cybercrime based on that cybercrime as a service model.
So if it's that easy, surely governments, regulators and banks owe it to people to at least reduce the harm. Now, Australia's new scam prevention laws have passed Parliament and are a good step, but there won't be any enforceable codes to prevent mule accounts until at least 2026. Penny Crofts is a criminal law professor at the University of Technology, and she calls herself a philosopher of the wicked. She says corporations use euphemistic words like scam rather than fraud to minimise the appearance of crime. She's written academic papers about the 2018 Banking Royal Commission, which called charging dead people fees for no service, which is actually fraud. She says corporations like to call these little slips things like a governance issue.
And I'm like, it's not a governance issue. It's a criminal issue. Like they're actually breaking the law. So just to pick one, money laundering. The whole idea with money laundering is these are offences where you don't need to prove criminal intent.
Yet Penny says no corporations in Australia have ever been charged with criminal money laundering. Only individuals have. So in an age where transnational cybercrime is systemic and enabled by different technologies and corporations, Shouldn't we stop blaming the victims for crimes they have little ability to see coming?
With the banks, there's an individualizing of the problem. They rely on people's shame about being victims in this situation. You might have individual compensation. You're trying to avoid people combining together and kind of recognizing this is a collective problem.
And next time on Daylight Robbery, we talk to Australia's first decimal currency bank robber about how armed bank robbery is now a dinosaur crime.
You could say I was a pro. I robbed my first bank, Commonwealth of course, in January 1966, nearly 33 years ago. At the time I was 23 and I was a fast runner. There have been many banks since then.
In those days, banks bore the loss for armed bank robbery, not customers. And John tells the inside story of how they stamped out the problem and shifted the thefts to customers. Subscribe and follow to hear more.